Welcome to the Line Life podcast. I'm Jeff Postlethwaite, senior editor of T&D World, and today we're bringing you more stories of the grit, courage, and inspirational teamwork that it takes to be a line worker. Our December 2023 episode features David Mendonca, who spent 16 years as a journeyman line worker, and his experience and dedication in the field have made him a respected professional in the industry. Besides his successful career, David has been married for 18 years and is the father of 3 children. He understands the importance of balancing work and family life, and his commitment to being a supportive father and husband is truly commendable. David's passion for making a positive impact extends far beyond his professional and personal life. As the executive director of the Show Up Dad Foundation, he encourages men to be engaged and involved in their children's lives. Through his leadership, he has touched the lives of countless families, helping fathers to become more present and supportive. Furthermore, David's dedication to mentoring is evident in his role as a climbing instructor for apprentice line workers. He shares his knowledge and experience to train and equip the next generation, ensuring their success in the industry. This episode of the Line Life podcast is sponsored by Husky Tools. Power and control, coming soon and new for 2024, Husky Tools introduces the SLA series. 7 new, upgraded 6-ton inline tools, 4 crimping tools, and 3 cutting tools that are lighter, faster, ergonomic, and compact, featuring our new patent-pending auto-retract Husky Fast Auto. More power to choose. Go to huskytools.com for our launch updates.
Welcome to the Line Life podcast. My name is Amy Fishbach, and I am the field editor of T&D World magazine and the host of the Line Life podcast. For our December episode, we're honored to feature David Mendonca on our show. I first met David at the 2023 International Lineman's Expo, and he shared a story about the Show Up Dad Foundation and his podcast. His Show Up Dad podcast is a nonprofit online ministry dedicated to strengthening men and empowering families in the line trade industry. The mission is to provide support, guidance, and inspiration for fathers and husbands. Each Monday, he releases new episodes on all major podcast platforms. He also just launched 2 new special series, the Lineman Chronicles and Marriage on the Line, Lifeline. These series delve deeper into the unique challenges and triumphs faced by those in the line trade and explore the dynamics of marriage and family life in this context. By tuning into this podcast, listeners can gain valuable insights, practical tips, and inspiring stories for experts and fellow line trade professionals. For example, a recent episode featured line worker Chad Preston. Chad has been married to his wife for 25 years, and they have raised 3 children. This episode explores Chad's experiences as a line worker, the challenges he's faced, the lessons he's learned, and the rewards that come with this demanding profession. From braving extreme weather conditions to maintaining a strong work-life balance, Chad's story will inspire you to persevere in the face of adversity and cherish the moments that truly matter. Before we feature my interview with David, let's listen in on a segment from the Lineman Chronicles, episode 37, featuring Chad Preston.
When you're on the job, man, you've got to keep that mind there. Mm-hmm. You got to keep your head in the ball game all the time, because if you're not, it's your family that's going to pay for that. It's not you're going to pay for it physically, but they're going to pay for it for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. Potentially, if something happens to dad or whatever that looks like. I've told guys for a long time, many years, if the reason we have safety rules and we do all those things to keep ourselves safe is not just necessarily only for us. It's for our families too. And if you're going to break those rules and be, that guy that's just haphazard and doing whatever he wants to do whenever he wants to do it, you might as well go home and walk in the door and tell your wife and your kids that you don't love them and you don't care anything about them, because that's what you're saying without saying it.
For the next segment, we'll feature an interview with line worker David Mendonca, host of the Show Up Dad podcast. David, can you talk about your podcast and the mission of it?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a nonprofit organization helping to ignite the fire for father engagement. At the Show Up Dad, we understand that what we do is hard. right? And we wear many different hats,
Yes.
right? As linemen. But we want to just bring awareness to that we are more than just a paycheck, right? A lot of times we're called off on all these jobs and stuff like that. And we spend a lot of times away from our families.
Right.
And we justify that by saying, hey, I'm trying to provide a better life for them. Unfortunately, sometimes that gets a little crossed and we forget about our families and we think we could supplicate the time lost with buying them stuff.
Okay.
So
Sure.
we're trying to bring awareness to that, right? And we also deal with mental health, familial conflict, and marriages as well, because 1 in 2 marriages are dissolved in this trade, and we don't like that. We want to stop that, right? So that's what we do.
That's wonderful. And talk about some of the guests that you've had on since you started the podcast and kind of what they talk about.
Well, we've had guests like Dr. Stephen Poulter, which is a bestseller. He does the shame factor and the father factor and the mother factor. He's also Kobe Bryant's clinical psychologist when Kobe was around. He's been a guest for 2 or 3 episodes, and he does a lot with shame because as men, a lot of times when we're dealing with shame, we want to hold it in and we act a certain way. So he goes over that and why we react with anger instead of, with kindness and stuff. So we had guests like that. We've had movie stars. We've had Jim Morris, who was the rookie in that movie, the Disney movie, The Rookie.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we had him as a guest. We've had Navy SEALs on there from Carlos Mendez, Green Berets, Andy Marr from Warrior Angels Foundation. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast and just so many different guests. I think we have over 152 episodes now.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, and we put out 1 a week.
1 a week is a lot.
So both my wife and I, since we've dealt with this through our church and stuff like that with marriages, we also have a new episode that we call Marriage on the Line, Lifeline, where we bring other men and women in the industry to discuss and talk about what they do to be successful in the marriage, try to bring hope to this new generation, right?
Sure.
So that's been a big hitter for us.
And talk about some of the strategies that line dads can use when they're working storms. Because I know that they have to miss birthdays, they have to miss, Christmas and holidays. What's some ways that they can stay engaged with the family when they're working long hours or away from home?
Well, the first thing I want to say, there's no such thing as work-life balance.
Right.
Okay. There's not. Okay. You're going to fail there. So what we suggest is that you be where your feet are.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is if you're at home, be 100% at home. Turn off that phone, right? Make that quality time. Okay. And the same thing at work. Leave your family issues at home. That way you're safe when you're at work, right? Because people are depending on you and you got to have your brother's back. So be where your feet are. That's the number one thing I tell people. And also too, I want to just stress this. You got to kind of look at it in a sense like what's important to you. If you're just trying to, I get it, right? Like if you have a plan, like for me and my wife, I never had a plan. I always said, okay, next year, right? And it never came. Next year never came. I mean, it was just always the same thing over and over again, right? So she got tired of that. And what I tell guys now, especially young families, is have a plan.
Sure.
Right. And be on the same page. Because when your dream becomes your spouse's nightmare, that's time to reassess the dream. And that's what we're seeing right now. A lot of these women sign up because they like the money. They like that their husband's a lineman and stuff like that. But they really don't understand fully what it entails. Okay. So I think it's important that they understand what the job is going to consist of.
Absolutely. Right? And what about the line wives? What's your words of wisdom for them? Because I know it's got to be hard having, raising kids, having your husband away. How can they better support one another and, get some time for themselves every once in a while too?
Well, mental health's a big thing, especially for line wives.
Yes.
For the men, I just want to stress that, man, when you're gone, your wives are handling everything in order for you to be successful at work.
Absolutely.
So help them out, right? Our job doesn't just stop when we come in that door, okay?
Right.
We need to give them time too, right? Otherwise, we're going to burn them out.
Yes.
It's like single phasing on a 3-pot can, lose 1 can, that's 86.6% efficiency. It's going to burn out over time.
Sure.
Right? So that's exactly what we need to do for our wives. We got to give them that opportunity to recharge as well. So be more present with them, really spend time to talk with them. Right now, we live in an age where we got Zoom, we got all these different things that we can communicate with. So take that time, get on a phone call, you know what I mean? Zoom with them, at night, say your prayers with your kids, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So just try to be present when you can.
And what inspired you to start the podcast? Are you a line worker yourself?
I was a line worker, yes. Now I retired in 2020 from my tools, and I took on a whole new role of starting this foundation. And the foundation was based off of my mess, all the stuff I went through, making all these mistakes throughout my marriage. My wife, I almost lost her in 2018. She came down with a chronic illness and her heart stopped Christmas Day.
Oh my goodness.
And even then, I still didn't stop what I was doing. I still was on the road, still trying to provide, doing all these different things, right? And 2020, I just finally said, enough is enough. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to start this foundation because I have made a mess of my family and their life, But since I've made that transition and I started being more present, more aware, helping other people out, doing the inner work that I needed to be there, to be a show up dad, to show up for my family, it's made a huge impact on their lives, especially my youngest daughter. I was on the road for most of her life. She's now 17 now. Guess what? The impact that I have now with her, she's asking me to go with her to pick out her prom dress.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That would have never happened.
That's really great.
You know what I mean? So it helps. Every little bit helps of us being present, of us being engaged with our family and, taking time for what's important.
And what about mental health? That's something I've thought about writing an article about. And with line workers, sometimes they lose their best friends in accidents. They see a lot of different things that can be really troubling. How can line workers take better care of their own mental health?
I call it the airplane theory. And what I mean by that is, you get on these airplanes, especially when you're traveling and stuff like that. And they always tell you that when some turbulence happens or whatever, and those little things fall down, you're supposed to take care of yourself first because you're no good for anybody else. Right. So that's the same theory I say. Take care of your own mental health. Because for men, when we're dealing with depression, it turns to anger. Okay. And then what happens, it's like a tube of toothpaste with the lid on it. When we roll that up, what happens? It's going to burst out the sides, the seams, it's going to be messy and everything. And usually that falls on the ones that we love.
Sure.
So you have to be aware of that. You have to take time for yourself. You have to read. You have to take care of your health. I lost a younger brother in 2020. He was a lineman as well. He died on a hunting accident, pulling out a bull elk on his wife. Here's a guy who's running 10, 15 miles a day, thinking he was in great health, right? He was a lineman, like I said, and he goes on this hunt to never come back again.
Oh my goodness.
He didn't take the time to see what was wrong with him because you can't see those. They're called widowmakers, right? And he didn't know that all the stuff he was doing was affecting him with the stress at work, with chewing tobacco and, even diet, right? Because a lot of times on the right-of-way, we don't have the best diets.
Right.
We're
call it the gas station diet, what I heard. Right.
Or the right-of-way sushi and all that, right?
Right-of-way sushi.
But
that sounds scary.
all these little things started adding up, you know what I mean? And unfortunately for him, he has 2 daughters he's never going to see again.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so take care of your health, especially, and your mental health as well. We've lost a couple of brothers this year alone.
I'm sorry to hear that.
To mental health, and it's because we've been taught so long since childhood that, hey, guess what? You don't cry. You don't share your emotions, right? Rub some dirt on it, kid. That's what they tell us. So guys have been conditioned that way to not tell their brother or their bucket brother or their pole buddy or whatever that something's going on with them. And that needs to stop,
I could not agree more because when you hold all that inside, that can lead you to a really dark place, And another thing I want to talk to you about for line workers is if you're not in a good state of mind and you go out on the job, talk about the danger of that. Like if you get in a fight with your wife or don't get a good night of sleep or, something's going on at home with one of your children and taking that to the job.
When you do that, that's super selfish because your buddy, like I said, your pole partner, your crew is relying on you to be clipped in 100%, right? So when you're not 100% yourself, guess what? You're putting them in jeopardy.
Absolutely.
That is one of the most selfish things you can do, honestly.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
So when you are doing that, you need to let somebody know. If you're not right and you're not okay, be a man and say, hey, man, I'm not right.
Right.
You know what I mean? Can you go up in the air for me? I know when I was pushing a crew, if a guy came to me and said, hey, man, I'm not doing good today, then I would go up in the air.
Sure.
Because I knew I didn't want to put him in danger.
No, absolutely not.
Know? And I think a lot of guys are doing that. I think there's some foremen out there that are doing that because there's still a lot of good men out there that are who really care for the industry and really care for their men. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So.
And what is one of your favorite episodes that you've published so far? It seems like you've published quite a few of them.
I've put out a lot.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a lot of them.
My favorite ones are the Lineman Chronicles.
Oh, that sounds interesting. What's that?
So the Lineman Chronicles is based off of linemen that come on our show.
Okay.
That share what they do to be successful at the home, on the job, in the career.
Love that.
In their marriages, everything, right? And we just bring them on and they talk. Some of them have some pretty crazy stories. You know, we've had guests on there that have been to prison who have had fatalities and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And they share what not to do. One of the things my father always taught me is learn from other people's mistakes. And that's exactly what my story is. I made a lot of mistakes. I want the younger generation out there to learn from them so they don't have to repeat that, right?
So if you had to rewind time, how would you have handled your job as a line worker differently?
I would have reassessed the situation with my wife. I would have brought her with me on the road instead of just saying, you're at home. You have the kids, you have the 5 dogs, you have the 300 chickens, you have the farm, you're taking care of this. I'm going to go provide.
Yeah.
I would have changed it up and I would have brought them with me on the road.
You brought them with you on the road.
Some
line workers do that.
Dude, it is the greatest thing because you're growing together.
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
It's not for everybody, right? But that falls back to assessing that dream, you know, and being a partner with your spouse, you know what I'm saying? And just ask him, hey, man, what do you want to do? You know, one of the biggest complaints that my wife had for me was, man, you're always making decisions without me. I feel like we're roommates.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
And it was absolutely true. I was a man who brought home the paycheck. Guess what? I'm the one who's going to do this. I'm going to do this. You know what I mean? And that doesn't fly, you know?
Yeah, it's got to be a partnership. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today, David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, check out the podcast, Show Up Dad Podcast, man.
Show Up Dad Podcast. And where is it available?
It's on every major platforms. We air to over 750,000 people on a radio station.
Fabulous.
Yeah, check it out, man. And we're a nonprofit organization as well. So we're here to ignite the fire for father engagement. So thank you.
Thank you so much, David.
Absolutely.
And we invite the Show Up Dad podcast listeners to also listen to the Line Life podcast, which celebrates the line trade. You can follow the Line Life podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Thank you so much for listening to the Line Life podcast.
Husky Tools has the widest selection of lineman products across every utility category. We feature the largest assortment of field-tested hydraulic crimping and cutting tools powered by the industry's most popular battery platforms, Milwaukee and Makita. Lineman proven and utility approved for nearly 50 years. See us at huskytools.com and mention this podcast and we'll throw in a new Husky Tools Line Life hat with a brand new Husky Tools catalog hot off the press. This episode of the Line Life podcast was written, recorded, and edited by Amy Fishbach. It was produced by Jeff Postlewaite. That's me. To listen to past episodes, visit www.tdworld.com/podcasts or find us at Podbean. You could also drop us a voice memo or message at linelifepodcast@gmail.com with your comments on this episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please follow this show on Podbean or your favorite podcasting app to be updated when new episodes are released. Thank you for listening.